A Wholesome Audio Romance by Isabel Joy. Lola had never been so confused and afraid. She didn't understand what was happening. Just yesterday, everything had been fine. Well, maybe not fine. Nothing was ever fine in this pack. Ever since Lola's parents were exiled for treason 10 years ago, everybody in the Wildfire Pack treated her like a ticking time bomb. In the past, Lola had defended her parents' honor, insisting they were innocent and there had to be a mistake. But when she realized she was only incriminating herself with them, she decided to shut up about it. Now, she bit her tongue when she heard other members of the pack whispering about it. Lola was almost glad her parents were gone so they didn't have to watch her sit by and say nothing while people insulted and spat on their memory. Though she wished their end hadn't been so painful. Shortly after their exile, Lola's parents crossed into another pack's territory and were ripped apart before they could even plead for their lives. Now, Lola was at risk of succumbing to that same fate. Without warning, the new alpha demanded that she be dragged before him. Ethan had only just taken the place of his late father, the old alpha, who'd suddenly died. There were whispers among the pack members that he'd been stabbed in his sleep, but Lola assumed they were only spreading gossip. Her pack had been so eager to accuse her parents of a crime, she figured they would pounce at any opportunity to cry, "Murder!" The problem was that now they were pointing the finger at her as they did so. "Lola," the new alpha growled at her. Lola hung her head in humble submission. She was innocent. They had no evidence. They couldn't do anything to her without evidence. How could you betray your own pack like this, murdering the alpha? What could you possibly stand to gain? Lola's gaze snapped up, her mouth falling open. He couldn't seriously be accusing her without any proof. "Why do you think it was me?" He glared at her. "Do you think we're stupid? We found the knife in your room. It still had my father's blood on it." "What? No," Lola cried. "There has to be a mistake. The murderer must have hid it there or something. I would never kill the alpha. Why would I?" He scoffed. "Isn't it obvious? To avenge your parents. My father exiled them for attempted murder of his life. He made a mistake letting you stay." "No." Lola wrung her hands together as she pleaded for the alpha to listen to her. "Please, please, you have to listen to me. I didn't hurt anyone, especially not the alpha." Everyone in the pack had been gathered together, so it was humiliating having to beg in front of them like this. But she was hopeful that someone would hear the raw honesty in her voice and come to her defense. She didn't know why she would ever think that. These people had probably cast bets that she'd turn out just like her parents. No one stood up for her because they all thought she was guilty before she'd even been accused of a crime. "You killed my father because you hold him accountable for your parents' death." His eyes shone with shed tears. Even as he made false accusations at her, Lola's heart went out to Ethan. He and his father had been very close. Some little boys grew up idolizing champion basketball players and race car drivers, but from the moment he was able to think, Ethan had always idolized his father. She felt sorry that he'd lost that person, but he shouldn't throw the blame around all willy-nilly. "No, I didn't kill him. He's too powerful for someone like me to kill. And doing something like that would be death sentence." With a sneer, Ethan said, "You're right. It is." Then he signaled with a quick upward tilt of his chin for his men to grab her. Lola's heart nearly halted in her chest, the fear freezing everything in her body even as her instincts told her to run. Thankfully, Lola leaned on her instincts, and before they could snag her arms, she bolted. Lola shifted into her wolf form faster than she ever had before, so fast that it actually hurt. Then, she was running as fast as her legs could carry her. Unfortunately for her, her fastest wasn't fast enough. Ethan and some of the other pack members had transformed too and were chasing her. She could feel them nipping at her heels. A part of her wanted to stop and just let them maul her because she felt like it was only a matter of time before they caught her. And maybe if Lola were guilty, she'd surrender right then. But Lola was innocent and she didn't want to die like this, with everyone thinking she was a murderer and a traitor, killed by the people in her own community. Lola forced her legs to move her forward. The wolves behind her were bigger and stronger, but that's exactly what slowed them down. They had more muscle to carry, which meant Lola had a chance. She retreated into the forest and weaved through trees with a grace the other wolves didn't have. While she dove beneath the branches and crawled through hollow logs, her pursuers were whimpering from behind as they plowed into the trees. Not soon enough, Lola had escaped with her life. Her legs were on fire. Her heart was racing, not simply from exercise, but due to the flood of emotions that was overwhelming her. Her wolf took deep breaths to slow the thunderous beating inside her chest. She looked at her surroundings and cowered at all the trees as though they were monsters looming over her. She no longer belonged to a pack. She didn't have a home to return to anymore. It wasn't like Lola had many friends in the wildfire pack. Maybe a few acquaintances. There weren't many who would deign to make small talk with the daughter of alleged traitors, but she'd appreciated the ones who were willing to exchange a couple words. She was already missing those people, even though none of them had taken her side. Now, what was she supposed to do? Where would she go? Just when Lola's heart had begun to slow, the realization that she'd essentially become a rogue had it zooming once again. What other term described a wolf without a pack? A wolf without a home? Her stomach was already growling. She'd skipped breakfast that morning, a decision she was now regretting. Lola needed food, but she didn't know whose territory she was in. She didn't recognize the terrain, so she doubted it belonged to the wildfire pack. What would happen if she tried hunting in another pack's territory? They'd rip her to shreds, just like they did her parents. But the other option was to starve. She couldn't decide which fate was worse. Lola tensed at a noise. It sounded like footsteps, but then it might have been a squirrel or another animal. She was growing more paranoid and scared by the second. Lola decided to hide while she thought over her next move. She ended up inside a narrow tree hollow. Lola used to wish her wolf was much bigger, but today, she thought she'd never complain about being small and petite again. There wasn't a lot of room, but it wasn't so cramped that Lola felt uncomfortable while she considered what to do. And her hiding spot was right across from a stream, so she could quench her thirst and listen to the calming sound of the water wading over the land while she tried to piece her thoughts into a cohesive plan. Her stomach growled louder and louder by the second. Her hunger turned from discomfort to pain. The sounds of squirrels and rabbits and elk rustling the leaves and snapping twigs was enough to make her drool. Eventually, Lola decided she'd rather a quick death than an agonizingly slow one, so if another pack bit her throat for hunting in their territory, so be it. Lola felt bad for stealing something that wasn't hers, but she was so hungry. She managed to nab a rabbit, then crawled back into her tree hollow to sleep for the night. The next day, Lola considered venturing further into the forest, but that hollow opening in the tree next to the stream was already starting to feel like home, so she decided to stay for at least a few more days. It wasn't long before she'd scared off all the small animals in the area. They'd learned a wolf was residing there now, and they were smart enough to move out. Lola tried to catch the fish in the stream, but they eluded her jaws every time. All that came out of the water when she snapped her teeth at them was a wet muzzle. The hunt for food would have to continue somewhere else. She could still sleep in her tree hollow, but she'd have to find food in another part of the forest before her body lost its strength. If that happened, Lola would be too weak to catch her prey, and she wouldn't be able to defend herself in case she ran into members of her old pack, or members of another pack. Lola tried to be careful as she moved through trees, listening and sniffing the air for signs that there were other wolves nearby. She caught a whiff of something that smelled like her kind. Funnily enough, it was a pleasant smell. So pleasant that she was tempted to head in its direction, but that would be suicidal. Instead, Lola went the other way until she felt confident that they wouldn't notice her scent. Lola's heart leapt in excitement when she spotted a young deer that had lost its mother. Her human side felt guilty for killing a baby, but her wolf was hungry. Her tongue had rolled out without her realizing as she stared at what she hoped would be her next meal. It was such a shame because it was such a beautiful creature. Lola made sure its death was quick and painless before she helped herself to the poor thing's meat, which was almost juicy and tender enough to make her cry. She'd planned to stuff her belly until it was full and satisfied. At this point, it had been 2 whole days since she'd last had something more filling than a scrawny squirrel to eat. Unfortunately, Lola only managed one bite before she noticed the three wolves approaching from behind her. She immediately stopped eating and whirled around. The one on the left had a white belly and a silver back, as if it were a great white shark incarnate. The middle wolf was the largest of the three, with massive paws and bulging muscles. The one on the right scared her the most because he was baring the sharpest teeth she'd ever seen. She might have asked him who his dentist was if she weren't in fear for her life. They were all snarling at her, eyeing the deer she'd killed. That deer had been in their territory. It should have been their dinner, and Lola stole it from them. Lola avoided looking directly into their eyes, but she didn't dare turn her back. If she did, they'd see it as her lowering her guard, and they'd seize the opportunity to attack. Lola did her best to keep from trembling, but honestly, she was terrified. One wrong move was all it would take, and she'd die today. She'd suffer the same tragic end that her parents did, killed in another pack's territory before she could even plead her case. These wolves didn't see her as a poor soul, accused of a crime she didn't commit and wandering without a pack because of it. They saw her as a rogue, and worse than that, a rogue that was stealing their food. That was a crime punishable by death. She had to get out of here. Lola took a slow step backwards with her hind leg. She saw the wolf in the middle twitch his ear. He'd heard her. He knew she was preparing to make a run for it. Lola threw subtly out the window and just bolted, or at least she tried to. Not 3 seconds later, she was being tackled to the ground. Lola rolled over and used her paws to push the wolf off of her. It was pointless, though, because before Lola knew what was happening, the other wolves had her cornered against a tree. Lola was outnumbered 3-1, and they had her pinned down before she had a chance to run. She couldn't give up, though. If she had to die, Lola would go down fighting. The wolf with the silver back lunged forward, snapping at her neck, but Lola swiped at his nose. He whimpered in pain, louder than she was expecting him to. She must have clawed him in exactly the right spot. He was still recovering from his injured snout when the largest of her 3 opponents took his turn leaping at her. He aimed for her throat, but Lola twisted away as best she could, so his teeth caught her side instead. Her attacker didn't care. He sunk his teeth in deeper anyway. Lola cried out in immense pain. She'd never had another wolf bite her before, nothing beyond gentle nipping when she played with the pups. This felt as though a thick knife were carving a hole into her skin. She wiggled out of his grasp, leaving behind a small chunk of her side, but thankfully it wasn't much. Having freed herself, she ran out of there. Lola was so tired of being chased away from everyone and everything, yet here she was, once again being told that she didn't belong and that she wasn't wanted. The wound at her side burned hot. She might as well have lit her fur on fire. She convinced herself that the pain was a good thing because it meant she was alive. Somehow, Lola managed to escape. She was either fast or lucky, and right now she was too relieved to bother figuring out which it was. When she was sure she was at least somewhat safe, Lola stopped to catch her breath. She had to be more careful. Now that she'd run into the pack who claimed this territory, they'd be on the lookout for the rogue who dared trespass and eat their food. Lola would have to lay low for now, even if that meant going a few days without hunting. Maybe she could forage for berries. Berries wouldn't fill her stomach like meat, but it was better than nothing. She'd been taught how to tell which ones were poisonous from which ones were edible. That lesson had been a part of the Wildfire Pack's learning curriculum. The poison in berries wasn't potent enough to kill a werewolf with supernatural healing abilities, but the consequence of eating one could mean unbearable stomach pains and crippling nausea, which were symptoms Lola would rather avoid. She'd already hurt her side. Best keep the rest of her body in tip-top shape. Lola wondered if she should shift into her human form. Maybe her scent wouldn't be so noticeable if her wolf were contained. And Lola was good at climbing trees, so she could hide under the cover of leaves and branches for the time being. The other wolves wouldn't be able to maul her from all the way up there, even if they did manage to reach her, and she doubted that they could. Not many werewolves could climb as well as she could, if they could climb at all. Lola loved tree climbing, loved the view, loved feeling like she was on top of the world, loved feeling like she was that much closer to touching the sky. No one in the Wildfire Pack counted it as a useful skill, and they often said things like, "Are you sure you're not a monkey?" Nothing they did or said ever stopped her, though. And thank goodness for that, because maybe it would give her the advantage she needed over everyone else. Or maybe they'd just climb up after her and push her out the trees. Either way, it wouldn't be the first place they'd look, so she should just give it a shot. It was the only plan she had right now. Besides, Lola needed to get a better look at her wound and treat it as best she could with what little supplies she had on hand. In her wolf form, all she could do was lick at it. Lola double-checked that she was alone before shifting. She suppressed a cry of pain as her hurt side stretched and reshaped itself. It made her injury feel even worse. Lola gasped when she looked down and realized she was naked. She shouldn't have been surprised. All wolves shed their clothes when they changed from their human form to their wolf form, but somehow it hadn't occurred to her that she wouldn't be wearing any clothes once she changed back. What should she do? In case she ran into those wolves again, she didn't want them to see her naked. Maybe it was a stupid thought, since right now she was in a life or death situation and she should worry about other things, like eating and staying warm and hiding from the wolves who ran this territory. But she felt embarrassed traipsing about the forest without so much as her underwear covering her. She could try to sew some leaves together, but she didn't want to waste all of that time. Lola started walking as she considered what to do, self-consciously covering her body with her hands even though she didn't think anyone was around to see her. She touched her side and her palm came back all bloody, but it wasn't so much blood that she worried she'd bleed out. Lola halted. She smelled something concerning. She sniffed at the air. There were wolves not too far from her. She needed to move fast. Lola kneeled down and covered herself with mud to mask her scent as best she could. Before she moved any further, Lola spotted something that made her leap with excitement. On the ground were clothes, some neatly folded and others laying all crumpled up in messy piles. The wolves in this area must have left their clothes behind before going for a pack run or a hunting expedition. They'd come back here soon to retrieve their clothes once they were finished doing whatever it is they were up to. So if Lola planned to take their things, she needed to act fast. Yet Lola was hesitant to steal. She'd already stolen their food. Now their clothes? What kind of a person did that make her? But Lola had just been pining for a change of clothes, and here they were for the taking. How could she resist? Lola knew she had to make up her mind now. Lollygagging was dangerous, and she'd already done plenty of it. Lola picked out a simple pair of jean shorts with a row of flowers embroidered at the hem. It was cuter than anything she'd owned when she still lived with the Wildfire Pack. She briefly wondered what her old pack had done with all of her clothes and the rest of her belongings. Probably threw them away. Lola paired the shorts with a simple maroon shirt that wouldn't show bloodstains if she ended up bleeding on it and slipped on some pink sneakers. The sneakers didn't match the rest of the outfit, but they were the only ones that fit her, and she wasn't exactly worried about color coordination right now. Lola found a few dollar bills, a wallet, and a phone in the back pocket of her new jean shorts, which she took out and laid on top another set of clothes. The girl she was stealing from would at least be able to recollect a couple of her things. As Lola hurried away, moving as quietly as possible, Lola justified stealing the clothes by telling herself that they'd help mask her scent. And surely the girl she stole from had an entire wardrobe full of clothes waiting for her back home. Meanwhile, Lola had nothing. Not even a home to go back to, let alone a wardrobe. She'd probably never see her closet or anything she left behind ever again. Lola forced herself to stop thinking about it before she started crying. She didn't have time to cry right now. She needed to find a new hiding spot. Lola hiked through the forest until the smell of wolves wasn't so prominent. If her judgment was right, this area she was in now hadn't had a visit from a wolf in a while, which was perfect for her. Lola picked out a tree that looked strong and sturdy, then climbed to the thickest branch that offered the most cover. Maybe she should have returned to that stream one last time to clean her wound. But what if the wolves followed her scent to that tree hollow where she'd been sleeping? She'd stayed there for a few days in her wolf form, so no doubt that place smelled like her. Maybe later she would try to find where the stream started. For now, Lola was content to sit and stay where she was. The cut couldn't have been that serious anyway, or it'd hurt a lot more. Her wound would heal itself. Cleaning it might have helped, but oh well. Her supernatural abilities would see to her recovery. Of course, they'd work faster if she had more strength and a bit more food in her stomach. If only those wolves had shown up even a few minutes later, then she could have eaten her fill. Night fell within the next hour, and Lola spent the entirety of it sitting in that tree. She hooked her arm under and over one of the branches to stop herself from falling in case she tried rolling over in her sleep. A fall at this height might really hurt her. It was already taking ages for the cut on her side to heal. If she tasked her body with healing a bunch of broken bones while she was this weak and hungry, it wouldn't be able to repair so much as a hangnail. She woke up to the sun shining brightly in her eyes, its yellow rays slipping through gaps in the tree leaves. Lola took in the splendid, picturesque colors of the sky. Pink, purple, and orange mixed together like paints on an artist palette. She was tempted to thank the sky for showing her something beautiful. At least the sky was kind to her, if no one else was. She wished she could stay in this tree and savor the sight forever, but she'd have to climb down at some point. Lola decided it wouldn't hurt to put off the inevitable, though. While she loitered in the branches of the tree, Lola figured she might as well get comfortable. She slipped off the tennis shoes she'd borrowed and stretched her toes. Lola used the word borrowed and not stolen, so she wouldn't have to feel so bad about becoming a thief. She'd made a grab for the tennis shoes because they were the only pair lying around that looked like they'd fit her feet, but the shoes were too small, and she'd felt her big toe getting a cramp. Lola leaned her head back against the tree bark and heaved out a sigh, swiping her sweaty brown hair out of her face. It was so humid today, she could only imagine how frizzy it looked. What she wouldn't give for a hair tie right now. She closed her eyes for only a second before they snapped open once again. Lola stiffened as she heard small footsteps approaching where she was hidden. Someone was coming, and if her nose was right, it was a werewolf. It sounded like they were in their human form. Their feet patted the ground one at a time and not two. Could they smell her? See her? Lola forced her body to become completely still. Only her eyes moved as she searched for the wolf. She was a little relieved when she saw that it was just a pup, a young boy who couldn't have been older than 8 years old. Lola didn't let herself relax completely, though. If he spotted her, he might run and tell his pack, and for all she knew, his pack was right behind him. She had to be quiet. Unfortunately for Lola, she was a total klutz. And what a horrible time for her to find that out. She'd forgotten she was balancing her shoes in her lap, and with the slightest shift of her thigh, she sent the right one toppling over the edge. To make matters worse, it fell directly on top of the boy's head. "Ow!" the boy cried out, clutching his scalp before he bent down to examine the shoe that had landed in between his feet. Lola hoped that he'd assume it was raining shoes, or that the sky was falling and move on. But he wasn't young enough to be that stupid. She cringed when she heard him gasp. "Busted," she thought regretfully. "Who's there?" he shouted up at her. No one," she yelled back, as if he'd accept that answer and carry on with his walk. The pup's nose twitched as he sniffed the air. "You smell a little like Rebecca." Rebecca? Maybe that was the name of the girl whose clothes Lola had borrowed. Another twitch of his nose as he sniffed the air a second time. He really was kind of cute. The way his nose crinkled reminded her of a bunny rabbit. Not the kind she'd kill and eat, though. The kind she'd keep as a pet and name Fluffy. But not exactly like her. You smell like something else. Never mind. That's just my scent. Everyone says it's weird. Don't worry about it and go play, okay? Even from this high up, Lola could see the boy was glaring at her. "You're not from this territory, are you? You're trespassing. You're one of the rogues that they warned us about." "Just go away, please," she pleaded. The pup was stubborn, though. "No, this is our territory. You need to go away." "Fine, I will. After you leave. I promise." The boy growled at her, but it wasn't the low, guttural sound of a wolf preparing to rip its prey to shreds. It was the tentative, high-pitched sound of a pup trying to prove he was an adult. And it wasn't nearly as intimidating as he probably meant for it to be. "You leave first." Lola considered fulfilling his request. She didn't really have a problem climbing down and leaving his pack's territory, just as long as no one tried attacking her again. This pup seemed harmless enough, but he was too young to be hunting or taking a walk through the forest without adult supervision. No sensible pack would let their pups wander through the woods when there could very easily be rogues or invaders frolicking about. Surely there were other wolves, like his mom or dad, close by. Lola was safer in the trees than she was down there. "Did you hear me?" the boy yelled. "I said leave." At this point, Lola opted to ignore him. Boys had short attention spans. He'd get bored eventually. When he saw that Lola wasn't moving from her spot, he looked at his shoes, as if debating what he should do. Lola inwardly begged him to walk away. She'd keep her word. She'd leave once he did. The pup wasn't leaving, though. Instead, he looked back at her. Then, craning his neck and cupping his hands on either side of his mouth, he shouted, "You're a rogue and you don't belong here. This is my territory and I'll defend it with my life if I have to. I'll make you leave." Lola remained silent, though inside she was commending the boy for his boldness. She wished she could be so daring, could stand her ground against all odds. Still, his threats rang shallow. How was he going to make her leave? She was still asking herself this question when the pup answered it for her, digging his claws into the tree trunk as he made an effort to climb up after her. Lola sprang to her feet once she realized what he was doing. He was actually climbing the tree. "Stop, you're going to fall," she warned him. "Number..." He grunted, reaching to pull himself further up. His arms were shaking from the effort. "I won't." Not 30 seconds later, he proved himself wrong. The poor pup had made it halfway to Lola before he lost his grip and fell all the way back down. "No." Lola's arms instinctively shot out as if to catch him, but he was simply too far away for her to do anything. The boy landed on the ground below with a sickening thud and an even more sickening crack. Her heart ached at the sound of him yelping in pain. "My ankle," he cried, clutching at his foot. His face twisted into an agonized expression. He must have really hurt himself. "I think it's broken." He glanced up at Lola, who was still watching him from where she stood tucked behind the branches. He looked like he wanted to ask her for help, which was ironic since he'd been threatening to run her off not 10 seconds ago. Lola thought the boy would be too prideful to beg, but it wasn't long before he'd resorted to exactly that. "Please," he called up. "I'm sorry. Can you help me?" If it were anyone else, Lola might have barked, "Why should I?" But she remembered she was talking to a pup. What should she do? "You'll be okay," she yelled back, trying to sound as calm and reassuring as she could. "Your pack will come looking for you. They'll take you back home." "No, they won't," he wailed. Tears dripped from his eyes to his chin. Lola couldn't tell if they were the product of pain or panic. Likely both. "I ran away from there. I told them I hated them. No one's looking for me. They hate me." "I'm sure that's not true." The boy gave up talking to her. Now he simply held his leg and cried. "No one's coming," he whimpered to himself. Lola must have had a death wish, because if she actually wanted to make it to her 19th birthday, she would have taken this opportunity to run for the hills and find a better place where she could lay low. After all, what if he was faking? What if this was some clever ploy to lure her down so that the members of his pack could ambush her? In spite of her paranoia, Lola climbed down the tree and started tending to the injured pup. She couldn't just leave him. What kind of a horrible person would that make her? "Are you really going to help me?" he asked. "Even after I was mean to you." Lola ignored the question. The fact that she was hovering over him like a mother hen, inspecting his swollen ankle with all the care and worry of an older sister, should have given him his answer. "Can you move your foot at all?" she asked. The pup tried wiggling his foot around and immediately hissed in pain. "It hurts," he whined. "Okay, okay." Lola sighed. He was young, so his supernatural abilities wouldn't kick in as fast, and broken bones always took longer to heal than other injuries, even for grown-up wolves. If he couldn't walk, carrying him was the only way she'd be able to take him home. She wouldn't mind doing it if she didn't believe she'd be executed on the spot the second she dared show her face to them. She'd stolen from this pack. She'd stolen their food and their clothes. Stolen, not borrowed. If Lola were being honest with herself, she hadn't planned on returning the clothes anytime soon. That made her a thief, and no honorable wolf would respect a thief. But then what was the alternative? Leave him? If she did, he'd probably be fine. Despite what he said, Lola suspected that his pack would look for him, especially once it started getting late. She couldn't stand to leave a pup in so much pain, though, and he couldn't protect himself in this state. What if a rogue found him? Or a bear? Or something even worse? Lola was basically signing her suicide note with her next actions. But if something horrible happened to this pup, she would never be able to wash his blood off her hands. Grabbing the boy firmly by his shoulders, she met his eyes and looked at him with a serious expression on her face. "Listen to me," she began, her voice adopting a tone that was as gentle as a mother, yet it had all the severity of someone preparing to risk her life to see this boy home. "I can return you to your pack, and once we get there, they'll have a doctor look at you and make your ankle better. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to convince them to leave me alone. You said it yourself. I'm a rogue. I'm trespassing. And your pack won't appreciate that very much, so they might want to lock me up or hurt me. You're the only one who can vouch for me." He nodded. Only now was Lola getting a good look at him. He was a cute young pup with dark eyes and a chaotic row of freckles splattered across his nose and cheeks. His hair was silky, so the humidity didn't cause it to frizz up like hers. She was almost jealous. A tiny scar traced the side of his jaw. Lola wondered how he'd gotten it. He seemed reckless, so he probably had more than one of those. "I'll tell them not to hurt you," he promised. "I'll say how you helped me." Lola hoped that would be enough to convince them. "Whose territory am I in? What pack are you from?" "The Valor Pack," he answered. Lola searched the dusty vaults of her brain for any information it may have had on the Valor Pack. She didn't know much about the other packs. From her knowledge, the Valor Pack was smaller than the Wildfire Pack, and per their name, they claimed to prioritize virtues like integrity and honor in their day-to-day lives. Hopefully, mercy was another virtue they espoused, or else Lola would be dead before the morning was over. "All right," said Lola. "They're probably missing you, so we better hurry. Climb up on my back. I'll carry you." "No one's missing me," he muttered, morphing his expression into a pout. He climbed onto her back nonetheless, his arms wrapped loosely around her neck. She bit her lip when her wound complained at having the boy's thigh brush up against it. True to her word, Lola carried the boy home. She was able to follow his pack's scent for the most part. Every so often, she'd hesitate and second-guess herself, but the boy was there to provide directions when she needed them. It was a little funny when he'd tell her to turn right at the toad frog, or left at the fallen tree branch, like having a GPS. "What's your name, by the way?" she asked him. He must have trusted her now because he didn't even pause to consider whether he should be giving out his name to a total stranger. "Theo," he said. "What about you?" "Lola. I like that name. It's kind of similar to my mom's. Her name was Lily." That word didn't escape Lola's notice. "I'm glad you like it. Theo's a pretty great name, too," she said. Eventually, her curiosity got the better of her, and she ended up bringing up his mother. "You said was when you mentioned your mom. Did something happen to her?" "4 years ago, another pack invaded our territory and tried to steal it from us. My mom and dad died defending our home." Lola's own heart squeezed in her chest. "And did you guys win?" She could hear the smile in his voice, even though he still must have been in quite a lot of pain. "Yeah, we beat them up and everything." Lola laughed at Theo's enthusiasm. "Good. Sounds like deserved it." "Yeah," he agreed. She was going to ask another question about his parents when she heard a male voice shout, "Theo!" Lola jumped. She should have noticed sooner that a group of wolves had been closing in on them, but she'd been too caught up in her conversation with Theo, and the pain at her side had grown so hot and fervent she could hardly focus on anything else. However, now she was on high alert since Theo's pack had found them. She made mental notes about her surroundings, identifying 3 routes of escape so she could turn tail and run once Theo was off of her back. His pack must have sensed that he was close to home, and they dashed here to meet him. There were 5 of them, 4 males and 1 female. All of them were in their human forms, which made Lola feel slightly more comfortable. They could still hurt her and take her prisoner, but she'd never heard of a werewolf sinking their teeth into someone's jugular while in their human form. "I don't know whether to kill you or hug you," one of the males chastised Theo. "Do you know how worried I've been?" He was the most attractive male she'd ever seen before, with broad shoulders and chocolate eyes that stole her breath away. It was obvious to her, the way he took the lead and held his head up high, the way his presence commanded everyone's respect and attention, that he was the alpha. Lola dropped her gaze so she wouldn't appear impudent, still watching him and his comrades carefully out of the corner of her eye. "I was about to send a search party out to go looking for you," Lola almost told Theo. "See?" Before deciding that it probably would be smarter to speak as little as possible. Whatever she could do to keep the attention pointed away from herself. The alpha of the Valor Pack walked up to her and Theo, and Lola nearly fell backwards when his scent hit her. He smelled amazing. Better than amazing. She didn't have the words to describe how euphoric the smell was. He was all her favorite aromas combined into one: vanilla, cinnamon, and rainwater. Her nose never had something so pleasing and irresistible nestle up inside it. He was closer now, so she was picking up on other things. For example, she noticed that his shirt was too tight on him because when he moved, she could make out his six-pack through the material. Aside from that, it occurred to Lola that the alpha looked like a taller, stronger version of Theo. They had the same color hair and eyes, the same square jawline, the same nose, even the same freckles, though the alpha didn't have nearly as many as Theo. Theo must have been related to the alpha, but he couldn't have been his son unless the alpha was secretly much older than he appeared. He hurt his ankle," Lola muttered in explanation. The wolf with the phenomenal scent retrieved Theo from her back and pulled him into a tight hug, holding the back of his head in his hand as he pressed the young boy's face up against those broad shoulders. He squeezed him so hard that Theo yelped in pain. "You're crushing him," Lola fussed. The alpha immediately loosened his grip around the pup. "Oh, sorry." He let Theo pull his head up so he could look him directly in the eye as he spoke. Regarding him with a stern expression, he said, "Now do you see why I worry about you so much?" Theo's cheeks flushed red in shame and embarrassment. "I just wanted you to stop treating me like a pup." "You are a pup," the alpha pointed out. "You won't be forever, but right now you are. And more importantly, you're my little brother. If something were to ever happen to you, I don't know what I'd do. You're the reason I push myself so hard. Because I want to be able to protect you. I mean, sure, I want to protect everyone. But especially you. I'd rather cut my own tail off than let you get hurt. If you tried to understand that, you wouldn't get so annoyed with me when I say you're not allowed to do something." Theo nodded, burrowing his face back into his brother's shoulder, only this time without needing the alpha's hand holding it there. Lola imagined what it would feel like to be where Theo was, pressing her nose up against that same spot where the alpha's shoulder met his neck. The smell of him would probably overwhelm her. Lola chastised herself when she realized what she was thinking. She shook her head to rid it of all these foolish thoughts. She had to think clearly. This was her chance to escape, and she was blowing it. While the alpha and the other wolves were distracted by this beautiful family reunion, Lola would seize her opportunity to sneak away. That was the plan, at least. However, when Lola made to leave, she felt 2 sets of strong hands nab her arms into vice-like grips. Even though they were in their human forms, her captors had their claws out and were digging them into her skin. It felt like her arms had been caught in a couple of bear traps. "Not so fast, rogue," one of the wolves shouted at her. His breath smelled terrible, like dead fish, a stark contrast from the amazing scent that had greeted her seconds before. "Let me go," cried Lola as she struggled to break free. "This is the rogue that's been hunting in our territory," said Fish Breath. Lola's mom wouldn't have approved of her giving people nicknames, but it should be fine so long as she didn't say it out loud. What did Lola care if she offended this wolf anyway? Well, she did care a little, only because he might snap her neck if she pushed him too far over the edge. "I recognize her scent. It was only one time, and I didn't even get to eat it," she quietly argued. She elbowed the wolf to the right of her and Fish Breath as hard as she could, shoving the sharpest point of her arm into his ribcage. He grunted in pain, loosening his hold for all of half a second. Unfortunately, half a second wasn't enough time for Lola to slip out of his grasp and run. "You'll pay for that," he threatened. His breath didn't smell so bad as his buddy's. Actually, it smelled fresh and minty, like the alpha had caught him in the middle of brushing his teeth before dragging him outside. She glanced briefly at his face and saw he had a cut on his nose. It had healed for the most part. It was so faded, she'd almost missed it, but there was no mistaking that light pink line that started at the bridge of his nose and ended at the tip. She'd done that, she realized. She must have sliced deeper than she'd thought because she would have assumed that cut would be completely healed by now. "Don't hurt her," Theo yelled. He looked to the alpha, his apparent older brother. "She helped me. She's really nice." "All rogues are enemies, Squirt," said Cut Nose. "She's not," Theo insisted. Then, to his brother, he said, "She didn't have to bring me here. You can't let them hurt her." "She's trespassing, Theo," said the female wolf. "And she stole our food. We can't let her get away with that. Any rogue that messes with us has to pay." Lola tried shaking them off her again, but they held on, digging their claws so far into her arms she thought she felt them touch bone. Lola cried out in pain. To Lola's surprise and relief, the alpha protested. "Hey, enough of that. Be gentle with her. We don't know for sure that she's a rogue. And even if she is, so what? She saved Theo." Fish Breath snarled in her ear. Lola leaned her head as far away from his mouth as she could while he spoke. "And how do we know she wasn't the one who injured him in the first place?" "She didn't," Theo refuted. "I fell." "Luke, come take Theo," the alpha ordered. So Fish Breath's name was Luke. Lola didn't bother making a note of it. She thought Fish Breath suited him much better anyway. If her mom were alive, she would have admonished Lola for the continuous use of his nickname, no matter that she wasn't saying it to him directly. People are not defined by one flaw, her mom would tell her. But Fish Breath was really irritating Lola right now, so she didn't care. "Luke," the alpha said in a warning voice when Fish Breath didn't move. Fish Breath pointed at Lola, as if to confirm that the alpha actually wanted him to let her go. "It doesn't take two of you to hold back one small female, does it?" Lola didn't appreciate the jab at her size. With a loud sigh, Fish Breath let go of her arm and held his hands out for Theo. Theo was reluctant, but he relented when the alpha nodded for him to go. "Your breath smells like fish," Theo complained almost immediately. Lola Barley suppressed a laugh, but she couldn't stop the corner of her mouth from quirking up. Fish Breath rolled his eyes. "Can everyone shut up about that? I swear I'll never eat another tuna sandwich for as long as I live." "I hope not," said Theo, earning a chuckle from the alpha. Lola shivered as he approached her, partially from fear, but also because he smelled even better up close, and it did something funny to her insides. She wondered whether the alpha was also feeling strange because she heard his breath hitch as he stared at her. "Can you look at me?" That was the first thing he said to her. Lola didn't acknowledge that he'd said anything at all, though. Instead, she stared at her bare feet, which suddenly looked filthy and ugly to her. She hid one of them behind her leg. Maybe she should have put those pink shoes back on before bringing Theo home, but she'd had so many thoughts crowding her mind at the time. The fact that she was barefoot hadn't even crossed it. "Hey," said the alpha, as if he thought she hadn't heard him. "Can you please look at me?" He didn't sound angry, just impatient. Finally, he stopped waiting for her to listen and placed his fingers underneath her chin to tilt her face up. When their eyes met, Lola's heart started beating rapidly, as if she were running for her life. The alpha's eyes flashed from brown to yellow, a sign that his wolf was wanting to come out. Lola was afraid that he would transform, but thankfully, he remained human. She felt his fingers twitch excitedly against her skin, his chest expanding as though his heart might explode out of it. "Mine," he barked. Lola wasn't naive. Well, maybe she was a little naive. She didn't know as much about her kind because she hadn't received the same education as the rest of her pack. The other pups would talk badly about her, and if they weren't ignoring her, they were picking fights with her and poking fun at her parents' memory. So Lola would often ditch classes, and no one stopped her. Still, she knew enough to understand why her heart was racing and why the alpha had called her his. The alpha of the Valor Pack was her mate. To most wolves, encountering your mate, the wolf who was supposed to be your other half, was a good thing. Not just good. Amazing. For Lola, it changed nothing. She still counted herself alone in this world. She couldn't trust anyone ever again. Her pack had accused her parents, then her, of crimes they never committed. They drove her parents to their deaths, and they drove her to run away like a fugitive of the law. No one stood up for her. She was her only advocate, her only friend. She didn't want or need anyone else. Somehow, some way, Lola would make it on her own. Without a pack. And without a mate. So when the alpha of the Valor Pack looked at her tenderly and rubbed his thumb over her cheekbone, she denied the pull of the mate bond and slapped his hand away from her. The alpha stared at her in utter confusion. For a minute, he didn't say anything. Judging from the expression on his face, he didn't know what to say in this awkward situation Lola had created for them. The silence seemed like it would stretch on forever when the alpha said, can I ask what that was for?" "I don't like being touched," she answered coldly. "I won't hurt you." He tried to reach for her again, but Lola flinched away. Lowering his voice to a whisper, he said, "What's the matter? Don't you feel it? The mating bond?" Lola acted confused. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mating bond?" Cut-Nose scoffed. "Come on, Alpha. You can't be serious. She's a rogue." "She doesn't smell like one," the Alpha remarked, leaning in closer to get a better whiff of her. He kept a reasonable distance between them, so Lola didn't say anything about it. His yellow eyes brightened as he inhaled more of her scent. "And even if that were true, I don't care about that. She's mine." The Alpha's attention drew to the hand still clenched around Lola's arm, as though he were noticing it for the first time. Lola heard a controlled growl sound from the back of his throat as he narrowed his eyes at Cut-Nose. "So you need to take your hands off of her before I do something I regret." It wasn't a threat, but a warning. Lola could tell the Alpha didn't want to hurt his friend, but if Cut-Nose didn't let go of her, he wouldn't be able to hold back. Cut-Nose was smart enough to heed his words. The second her arm was free, Lola tried to bolt out of there, but the Alpha snatched her wrist before she could get away. "Let go," she yelled. "It's okay. Calm down," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you. No one here is." She wanted to believe him. He looked like he might have been telling the truth, but Lola reminded herself that lying came easily to some people. The only person she could afford to trust was herself. "You smell like blood," he commented. He dipped his head to sniff her again, but this time Lola lurched back, or as far back as she could with him still holding onto her wrist. His eyes crinkled and hurt, but otherwise he pretended not to notice. "Are you injured? Come with us. Our pack doctor can look you over." "I'm fine." "If your wound hasn't healed by now, something's wrong." "It was your pack that gave me this injury in the first place," she exclaimed, pointing a finger at Cut-Nose and fish breath like a heated lawyer in a courtroom hurling accusations at a murderer on a witness stand. The Alpha of the Valor Pack clenched his jaw. "What?" He whirled his head around. The two wolves cowered under their Alpha's fierce glare. He didn't say anything to them, though. He didn't have to. They knew they were in trouble. Well, I promise that won't happen again, he reassured Lola. Please come with us. She shook her head. I don't trust you. Okay, he said, awkwardly rubbing the back of his neck. I'm not sure what I can say to change that. You can't say anything. I really won't hurt you. You should know that I won't. The mating bond wouldn't allow it even if I did want to. And I definitely don't. That's the last thing I want to do. The female wolf behind him made a disgusted sound. She was about Lola's size, but taller and leaner. Her physique alone made Lola think that she must spend a lot of time running and lifting weights. She looked like the kind of person who would run a 20K every morning as a warm-up for her real workout. Lola was always up for a good run, but the muscles in this girl's legs and thighs were evidence that she'd have Lola eating her dust if they were to ever race each other. That was bad news for Lola because it meant even if she managed to pull away from the alpha's grasp, she might not be capable of outrunning B, his companion. Ugh, enough of this mating bond stuff, Alpha Kai, the girl groaned. You don't actually think this rogue is your mate? So his name was Kai, Lola thought to herself. Kai didn't take his eyes off of Lola even as he gave the other girl his reply. I don't think. I know she is. Then your brain isn't working. She tapped her temple with her fingertip for emphasis. Rebecca, Fish Breath hissed. He gave her a look that said she shouldn't be talking to their alpha so disrespectfully. Lola was surprised Kai hadn't slapped her or kicked her for that last remark. She knew if it had been Ethan, the alpha of the Wildfire Pack, he would have had the fit of the century. Rebecca. The name sounded familiar for some reason, even though she didn't know any Rebeccas. There were some Beckys and even one Roberta in the Wildfire Pack, but no Rebeccas. No, I'm sorry, Rebecca trumpeted, though she didn't seem very apologetic. But someone has to talk sense into our alpha. Think of the pack. Do we really want a rogue for our Luna? It's just so wrong, Alpha Kai. And you know it is. I mean, look at her. She's not even impressive. Who would take her seriously? She's short and scrawny and... Rebecca trailed off as she studied Lola, her eyes lighting up with sudden revelation. And she's wearing my clothes. Oh no. Now Lola knew why the name Rebecca sounded so familiar. Theo had said she smelled like someone named Rebecca. Lola suspected it was because she was wearing stolen clothes, and here was her confirmation that was right. You thief! Rebecca shouted at her as she marched forward with arms raised, preparing to smack Lola across the face. Lola used her one free hand to shield her face. The blow never came, though. Before Rebecca could reach her, Kai stepped in front of Lola, effectively blocking her with his wide, muscular frame. If you touch my mate, Rebecca, I don't know that I'll be able to control myself, he warned her. Why don't you turn around and start heading back home? He looked past her to the rest of the wolves in the group. You two. Take Theo home. If he broke a bone, it might be healing wrong, so he needs treatment right away. But Alpha, we can't just leave you alone with a rogue, Fish Breath objected. He'll be fine, Cutnose said, sensing his Alpha's passionate frustration. Cutnose didn't want to be the person to stand between the Alpha and his mate. Otherwise, Lola might have to start referring to him as Broken Nose, or maybe even No Nose. Kai's Alpha for a reason. Let's go. Rebecca was still staring at Kai like he'd punched her in the face. Before she obeyed his orders and walked back, she sent Lola a murderous look that made her gulp. Lola didn't understand why Rebecca was upset with her when they were on the same page. Both of them thought Lola becoming the Luna was ridiculous, and neither of them wanted her as Kai's mate. Why was everyone always blaming her for everything? Once the other wolves were gone, Lola's entire body began to tremble. She was alone with the Alpha, she realized. If he screamed for help, his loyal followers would come running back. But if she screamed, they'd turn a blind eye. If anything, they'd laugh, relieved that their Alpha wasn't serious about the mating bond after all. Don't be so afraid of me, he said to her. I'm not afraid, she lied. You say that, but your hands are shaking. He smiled with his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. The Alpha cleared his throat, like he was stalling for time as he thought of something to say. I didn't catch your name. Lola considered giving him a fake name. She'd already made the mistake of giving Theo her real one, though, so it wouldn't be long before Kai figured out her made-up identity. Lola, she told him through a mouthful of reluctance. Lola, he breathed out in a quiet echo. Wow, you're beautiful. His face reddened as he hurried to correct himself. I mean, that's beautiful. Your name is beautiful. Not saying that you aren't beautiful, too. You are. It's just not what I meant to say at first. Even though it's the truth. You're definitely beautiful. Like, the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. That's not weird to say, is it? I know we just met and all, but you are my mate, so... He wasn't quite the smooth talker his movie star appearance made him out to be. Unless it was an act, of course, a way to trick her into lowering her guard. Lola decided to ignore his rambling altogether. She didn't have the energy to play whatever game he'd pressed start on. Can you let go of me? Well, if I let go, will you run away? No. You answered too fast. It makes me think you're lying. She was. She wasn't about to admit he was right, though. Come on, I don't look that scary, do I? He joked, but the attempt at humor was lost on both of them. I'm sorry that someone from my pack injured you. Luke's my beta. He's a really nice guy once you get to know him, but he's also hot-headed and very protective of his home. And Jax takes pride in his looks, so I think he took it too personally when you gave him that cut on his nose. And then Rebecca's just... She always has to be right. Lola didn't comment. Please, let us make it up to you. It's the least we can do to repay you for bringing Theo home. If you come back with me, I can have the pack doctor take a look at your wound. And then we can get you some food, something nice and hot. I could hear your stomach growling from a mile away. Lola clutched her abdomen self-consciously. That's probably why your wound hasn't healed yet. Your body doesn't have any energy to repair itself. I don't want your help. I just want to go back to being alone. You know, it's interesting. You talk a lot like a rogue, but you still don't smell like one. You smell like you've been around other wolves. You were a part of a pack once. What happened to them? Nothing. We had a difference of opinion, so I left. A difference of opinion was quite the euphemism for it. They thought she was a murderer. Lola maintained that she was innocent. Talk about a disagreement. And I've never been happier since leaving. I'd rather be alone. If I don't see another wolf again for as long as I live, that'll be no great loss to me. The alpha sighed. Lola? He began reaching his hand out to caress her face. Lola flinched and ducked away from him. I said I don't like being touched. Is there a reason for that? Did someone do something to you in the past? He asked hesitantly, like he was afraid to hear the answer. Maybe someone from your old pack? Lola knew what he was implying, and he was wrong. She didn't feel motivated to correct him, though. Why should she defend the character of the Wildfire Pack's members? If they did, why would I want to talk about it with you? I don't want to talk to anybody ever again. I just want to be alone. I keep telling you that, but you're not listening. I only look after myself now. I don't care about anyone else, and I don't expect them to care about me. Now she was the one rambling, and the longer she talked, the more her voice filled with passion, hurt, and emotion. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was not about to cry in front of the alpha. If that's true, he said, why help Theo? Theo's just a pup, and he was asking for my help. I couldn't just leave him there. You could have. Not saying that's what I would have wanted you to do. I'm grateful that you didn't. But you could have left him there. If you really wanted to. Lola faltered. I don't have to explain myself to you. The alpha paused, and the awkward silence drew out for so long, Lola started wishing he would say something. Her wish came true. You know, he began, I can tell Theo really likes you. Lola remembered how Theo reacted to her when he first saw her, yelling at her to go away just like Ethan did. Just like everyone did, honestly. In his defense, Theo was the only person who ever stood up for her, but he probably wouldn't have bothered had Lola not grabbed him by the shoulders and forced him to promise her. Trust me, he doesn't. He's just grateful that I helped him. Of course he's grateful, but it's not just that. He really does like you. I think he already sees you as a friend. The thought softened Lola's heart, though she didn't let it weaken her resolve. He'll be worried if I come back without you. He'll assume the worst. Will you at least come with me so that he can say goodbye? As Lola considered it, he added, besides, I don't think he ever got the chance to thank you. He doesn't have to say thank you. But he'll want to. Lola should refuse. This could all be one big ploy to trick her into walking into her own demise without a fight. Then again, if the Alpha wanted to execute her for trespassing and stealing, he would have by now. But like he said, the mating bond wouldn't allow him to hurt her, and as much as Lola tried to deny it, he smelled like all of her favorite things and Lola felt drawn to him like a magnet. She didn't know that much about mates, but from what little she had learned on the subject, all the signs were blinking at her in huge neon lights. And if they really were mates, Kai couldn't hurt her. But maybe that was exactly why he wanted her to follow him, so he could lead her to someone who could do the job he wasn't able to. Lola felt so conflicted because she wanted to trust him. Every time she inhaled, more of his scent entered her nose, and somehow he smelled better and better with each breath she took. It was becoming harder to resist him, and there was a part of Lola that was ready to give in. But the other part of her still felt the betrayal her former pack had scarred her with. Kai might tolerate her for now, but would he in the long run? Lola wasn't sure she was willing to stick around to find out. I don't know, she said. It'll be okay, Kai guaranteed. Nothing will happen to you, and you're free to leave whenever you want. If that's true, then let go of my arm, Lola challenged. The Alpha's chest puffed out as he took in a deep breath. Slowly, he blew it back out through his nostrils. He knew she was daring him, and he didn't want to take her up on it. He'd rather hold on to her. His words wouldn't make any sense unless he let go, though. She was free to leave, yet he had her arm caged in his hand like a ball and chain. Lola was surprised when he actually dropped his hand. It was a slow, controlled movement, as if Lola were a stray animal and he worried one wrong twitch of his finger might scare her off. Lola maintained eye contact with him, but whenever he would blink, she'd steal glimpses of the escape routes she'd previously identified. She considered bolting, but this stupid mating bond was making it so that she was already missing his hand on her arm. Lola chastised herself. They'd only met, and she was suddenly head over heels? No, she wouldn't let herself fall for someone so easily. Trust no one, she told herself. But even as those words rang in her mind like a fire alarm, she was motioning for Kai to lead the way. The room Kai had her wait in was cozy enough. The couch was cushy, and the AC kept it nice and cool. Lola reminded herself that she shouldn't get comfortable, though. She would leave once she saw Theo was okay, and they said their goodbyes. When they had first arrived at the Alpha's house, Kai quickly whipped together a meal for Lola: rice, meat, and a handful of steamed vegetables. When he saw Lola accept the plate but hesitate to eat anything on it, he had a forkful to prove it wasn't drugged. The food was cooked simply and seasoned with just a little bit of salt, but Lola was so hungry that to her, it tasted gourmet. Once she'd finished her seconds, Kai took the plate from her and washed it. With that chore done, he now stood off to the side, shifting from one foot to the other as he whistled a random tune. Lola suspected it wasn't an actual song, and that he was just making noise to fill the silence, which she didn't have a problem with. She played with her hair while she waited to see Theo, pulling the frizzy brown curls into a braid before brushing them out and braiding them again. She looked up when she heard the whistling stop. So, said Kai, do you have any hobbies? Lola squinted at him. What? I mean, what do you like to do for fun? There was a long pause. Personally, Kai said when she didn't answer him, I like to run. It's exciting to feel that kind of adrenaline, you know? And I like to cook too, but you can probably tell that I can't make anything fancy. Just simple stuff. He smiled at his shoes while rubbing the back of his neck. Lola noticed that he rubbed his neck quite often. It must have been a nervous habit, though she didn't understand what reason he had to be nervous. She was the trespasser. She was the thief. And what was he? The alpha. It was obvious which of them had the upper hand. Lola didn't respond to anything he'd said, so Kai started whistling again. He tapped the back of a chair like it was a conga. Not 30 seconds later, he paused the tune to continue their one-sided conversation. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm not good at small talk." "Then let's not talk," Lola muttered. A beat of silence passed. "I'd like for us to talk. Just for the sake of hearing your voice. It's nice." Lola glanced up at him. There must have been a butterfly caught in her chest because something inside it was fluttering. Lola felt like she should say something in this moment, but had no idea what. So she just went back to braiding her hair. Kai saw what she was doing and asked, "Do you need a hair tie?" "You have one?" "Oh, well, not on me. I don't really need them." He laughed, pulling at his hair to demonstrate how short it was. "But I can get one. Just wait here." He practically raced out of the house to grab a hair tie for Lola. Lola didn't know where he went, but when he came back, he had just the thing she'd been longing for. Finally, she was able to bind these stupid curls out of her face. It was silly, but now that her hair was secure, it felt like it was easier to breathe. Her face didn't feel so hot. Lola stared at Kai and wondered what his intentions were. Guilt swirled in her gut over how she'd been acting. He had only ever been kind to her, yet she was treating him like he was Ethan. That wasn't fair to him. To make matters more complicated, every time she gave him the cold shoulder, she was actually torturing herself. The mating bond was pushing her to let him sweep her off her feet and carry her away into the sunset, but Lola couldn't believe that anyone would do that for her. She had yet to meet anyone other than her parents who hadn't turned out to be a traitor. Trust no one, she reminded herself. She wouldn't trust Kai, but surely it wouldn't hurt to be a little nicer to him. After all, he'd fed her and stopped his pals from clawing her arms off. She felt like she owed him just a bit of kindness. Plus, the way he looked at her, as though she were as captivating as the Mona Lisa, tugged at her heart. So after she finished tying her hair back, she decided to humor him. "I like to clean," she mumbled, just loud enough for him to hear. Kai instantly perked up. "Clean? Wow, yeah," he said, like it was something impressive and unexpected. "Cleaning's good. And I like to climb trees." Lola wasn't going to admit this at first. For some reason, she cared what Kai thought of her, and most people thought she was weird for climbing trees when wolves were built to walk on the ground. Then she remembered that she would be leaving once she said goodbye to Theo, so it didn't matter what opinions Kai formed of her. "I like looking at things from high up." Rather than sneer or tease her, he regarded her with a wide and genuine smile. "I bet the view's great from up there," he said. "Amazing," Lola confirmed. "And it must be nice feeling tall when you're so short." She frowned. Kai caught his mistake. His hands flew up like he was a criminal begging the police not to shoot. "Not that being short is a bad thing." "Yes, it is. It means I'm weak." Or so the Wildfire Pack taught. "I don't think so." Lola didn't have the energy for a debate, so she let him win the argument for now. Theo said that he broke his ankle because he fell out of a tree. The corner of his mouth lifted. "He wasn't trying to climb up after you, was he?" "I told him not to," Lola contested. Kai had only just let his hands fall back down to his sides, but at Lola's defensiveness, he was throwing them up once again. Whoa, calm down. I wasn't saying it's your fault that he got hurt or anything like that. I know how Theo can get. He's always been reckless. I'm not blaming you for what happened." "Where is he anyway? It's been an hour and Theo got here before us." Dr. Guy likes to cut up with his patients. He's probably showing Theo some new magic tricks or something like that. It shouldn't be much longer. "Are you and Theo really close?" "Yeah, we are. He's the only family I have left. I mean, I think of everyone in the pack as family, but Theo's my only real family." His hand revisited the back of his neck. I don't know if I'm making sense. It makes sense, she reassured him. Kai looked like he had more to say. Lola didn't want to push him to talk. She knew it was a touchy subject, but she was curious to know how Kai felt about his parents' death. He didn't seem all that grief-stricken by it, but maybe that was because he'd accepted the tragedy and moved on with his life. Lola wasn't sure she'd accepted her parents' death yet. When she first learned of their dramatic end, Lola would find herself pinching her skin all throughout the day, even throwing cups of water in her face, hopeful that it was all just a nightmare she could wake up from. These days, she wasn't dumping water over herself anymore, but pinching was a habit she never grew out of. If anyone looked closely at her forearm, they would see the indentions of nails in her skin. She wondered if Kai had experienced something similar when coping with his own loss. Had he refused to believe it at first? Did he have nightmares even to this day? After a time, her curiosity got the better of her. Theo told me what happened to your parents, she prompted. Kai's expression fell, and Lola regretted saying anything. They died fighting for our pack, and the Valor Pack is still here, so their deaths weren't in vain at least. Lola hesitated. My parents are dead too. She had no idea why she was confiding this information to him, but it was too late to take it back. The words had already left her mouth. I'm sorry, said Kai. Lola was grateful that he didn't badger her with questions. He must have sensed that there wasn't anything more she wanted to say about it. Do you love Theo a lot? Of course I do. He's not just my brother. He's my best friend. Lola was glad Theo had an older brother who cared about him so much. It made her long to have a family again, someone to check on her when they noticed she was feeling down, someone to give her advice even when she didn't want it, someone to love her because they had to and because no one else would. Without thinking, Lola ended up saying aloud, It must be nice. I wish I had a sibling. Kai raised an eyebrow. I thought you said you wanted to be alone. Lola resisted the urge to kick herself. She'd gotten carried away and in a moment of weakness started spilling her guts to the alpha. I do, she reaffirmed, but the alpha wasn't persuaded. Wouldn't having a sibling make that a little hard? He asked with an annoying smirk on his face. Take it from me. Theo bugs me all the time. Forget it. You don't want to be alone, do you? Yes, she insisted, but at this point she didn't know who she was trying to convince. The alpha or herself? I do. But why? We're wolves. We're not meant for solitude. He stepped an inch closer to her, especially the ones who are lucky enough to find their mates. Lola stood up from the couch and moved further away from him, canceling out that tiny bit of closeness he'd created. Not all wolves are the same. I don't know about that. Most of us have 4 legs and a tail. That's different. Not really. Lola shook her head, growing frustrated with this conversation. I don't want to talk about this anymore, she said. Lola, don't do this. He said her name like he knew her, but he didn't. He didn't know anything about her. Lola dug her fingernails into her arm as she fought to keep her composure. You were finally starting to open up. Don't shut down now. No offense, but can you please stop talking? Lola had been so focused on holding herself together that she hadn't realized Kai was making his way over to her. He tried to grab her hand, but she yanked it away, clutching it to her chest as if he'd burned her. What are you doing? I told you not to touch me. Why won't you let me hold your hand? I don't understand why you're acting like this. I've tried doing everything I can to make you trust me. And I still don't trust you, she yelled. She had been so determined to keep her composure, not wanting to let this alpha know that he was getting under her skin, but her act gave way as years of pent-up anger, frustration, and hurt finally broke through the dam she'd built around herself. Soon, everything came flooding out. The tears were rolling down her cheeks before she could stop them. She tried to wipe them away, but more tears came to take their place. A sob escaped her throat, and Lola clapped her hand over her mouth to suppress it. Lola. The alpha called her name, and the sound of his voice only made everything worse. I don't trust you, she repeated, this time while crying. She had to take breaks in between her words as more sobs built up in her throat, but she felt like she had to explain why she was suddenly breaking down. I don't trust anybody. Everyone's selfish. They only look after themselves, so I'm just following that mentality. Do you want to know how my parents died? They were accused of attempted murder. No one could prove it because they were innocent, but our alpha had them chased out of the pack anyway. That same day, they ended up in another pack's territory and were killed. Do you still want to be around me after hearing that? Do you still feel like you could ever be with me? If I'm the daughter of a couple of alleged traitors, then doesn't that automatically mean I'm a traitor too? Because my old pack seemed to think so. Hey, hey, calm down, said Kai. But Lola couldn't calm down. Her emotions had lied dormant inside of her for so long, and now that she had set them free, they were making up for lost time. Her hands were trembling. Tears gushed out of her eyes like blood from an open wound. To make matters worse, every sharp inhale agitated her side, cueing painful protest from her injury. It made Lola want to stop crying, but she had already opened up Pandora's box, and there was no way she'd be able to return its contents to it anytime soon. You want me to trust you, but the wolves in your pack have already hurt me once. Who's to say they won't do it again? I've always been safer by myself. I've already trespassed and stolen from your pack and hunted your food. Not exactly a good first impression. Before long, you'll start accusing me of things I haven't even done. Everyone always thinks I'm to blame for everything. Why would you be any different? Before Lola had a chance to dodge him, Kai wrapped his arms around her and pulled her into his chest. The material of his shirt was soft and pillowy against her cheek, but Lola could feel that the muscles underneath were hard. It stole her breath away, and she nearly choked on her sobs. Just calm down, he told her in a hushed voice. He lifted his hand to cradle the back of her head, just like he'd done for Theo. Lola recalled that moment where Theo buried his nose into his brother's shoulder, and she'd wondered how it would feel to breathe in his smell so close up. Now, she knew, and it was everything she'd imagined it would be. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon mixed with rainwater calmed her. It was more liberating than the taste of fresh air. It was stupid because she'd only met him that morning, and they still had half the day to go. Yet, she felt safe in his arms. In fact, she heard her wolf telling her to burrow her face further into his chest. Was she a giddy teenager crushing on this guy just because he was a sight for sore eyes? Or was this the effect of the mating bond? Once her sobs had downgraded to quiet sniffles, Lola was hit with the embarrassment of how she'd overreacted. Kai must have thought she was such a frail character, crying because he touched her hand. She should gather what little remained of her dignity and acknowledge that her outburst was uncalled for. Lola opened her mouth to apologize, but Kai beat her to it. I'm sorry, he said, pulling away to look her in the eye. He used his thumb to wipe the tear trails from her face. I know you said not to touch you, but you were crying and it looked like you were about to have a panic attack. I had to do something. It's fine, she sighed. His fingers lingered on the apple of her cheek, and Lola figured she'd already thrown a big enough tantrum, so she didn't complain. She decided to let him be for now. I don't know why I got so upset. I shouldn't have said all that stuff. It's okay. I'm glad. You're glad? Not glad that you're upset. That's not what I meant. He quickly revised. It's just that from the moment I saw you, I've been asking myself, what could be going on in her mind? Because you were so quiet and... He broke off from his sentence as if afraid the next word would offend her. She figured she should be nice and save him from having to finish the thought. Rude? She said. To her surprise, Kai shook his head. Not exactly rude. I would say guarded. Lola backed away from him until she was out of his reach, not because she felt that he'd insulted her, but because she was still reeling from her embarrassment. I think I've been here long enough. If Theo's done seeing the doctor, I should say goodbye so I can go. Kai's expression told her he didn't like that idea. Where are you going to go? She shrugged. Wherever I want to. If you don't have anywhere to go, why don't you stay here? I know you don't want to acknowledge it, but we are mates, Lola. We should be together. She shook her head. I get that you don't trust me, but you can. And someday I'll prove it to you. But you have to give me a chance. You have to give this pack a chance. I promise we're different from what you're used to. We look after each other. We make sacrifices for each other. She hated that she was even considering his words. If it weren't for this stupid mating bond, she would be able to think straight. But his smell and his voice and his very presence were throwing her off her game. Give me one good reason why I should stay. I can give you 10. Well, I asked for one. And if it isn't convincing, then I'm leaving right now. I wanted to say goodbye to Theo, but the longer this takes, the more I feel like I'm being tricked. The truth was, the longer she talked to Kai, the more tempted she was to stay, and Lola knew she didn't want to stay. She just had to convince her wolf that it wanted the same. Kai's gaze sank to the floor. He was thinking about it, mulling over the 10 good reasons that explained why she shouldn't walk away from this place and deciding which one was most likely to work in his favor. The answer he submitted made her heart skip. Because I want you to, he said. He pressed his lips together immediately after the words slipped past, as if he hadn't meant to say them and wished he could take them back. Wait, no, that's not a good reason. Hold on, I have a better one. Fine, I'll stay. He blinked at her. What? Kai didn't know it, but that was the best answer he could have given. No one had ever wanted Lola anywhere, except maybe anywhere that wasn't within 10 miles of them. He was the first person who ever wanted her, and it felt nice to be wanted. Just for a few days, she confirmed. Kai stared at her for a long time, probably waiting for her to change her mind or pull the rug out from underneath him. Once he was certain she was serious, his face broke out into a huge, boyish smile. He looked like a kid on Christmas Day who woke up to find hundreds of presents under the tree. Thank you. He rushed forward as if to pick her up in his arms and twirl her around, but he backed off when he saw her flinch. He sobered, shoving his hands in his pockets and nodding coolly. That's good. I'm glad you're staying. Not forever, just for a few days. He nodded again. A few days. Never fear, Theo's here. She heard a boy cry all of a sudden. He was walking on crutches, a thin older man with a salt and pepper goatee following close behind. When Theo saw Lola, he smiled at first, but then he noticed her puffy face and red eyes. He instantly turned on his brother, hurling his crutches aside and limped over to pummel his shoulder. I told you not to hurt her, you big jerk. Kai caught his small fists and gently pushed his brother back so that he could grab the abandoned crutches off the floor. You just broke your ankle. Can you at least try to be more careful? Dr. Guy gave you these for a reason, you know? I know, because he thinks I'm a sissy. I never said that, said the older man. It'll heal fast, definitely by the end of the week, but you need to keep your weight off of it or all that work I did resetting your bones will have been for nothing. Okay, fine. Theo groaned, taking back his crutches. Then he went right back to punching Kai's arm. Why'd you drag her here? I told you to let her go. Kai rolled his eyes and flicked his brother's forehead. Ow! Cried Theo, rubbing the sore spot in between his eyebrows. That hurt. You're lucky that's all you're getting after the stunt you pulled today, said Kai. You know better than to run off. Fine, whatever. But Lola came because she wanted to make sure you were okay, Kai explained. Really, she'd come to check on him and to say goodbye. But since she wasn't leaving yet, the goodbye part wasn't necessary, and Theo didn't need to be told about it. He was happy when he heard that she decided to stay for a little while. Kai asked the doctor to check Lola's wound. Dr. Guy confirmed that it was healing faster now that she had some food inside her. By tomorrow, it wouldn't hurt anymore. Kai was worried she wouldn't feel comfortable sleeping in the same house as the alpha, so he introduced her to a friendly girl with bubblegum pink hair and enough energy to light up a football stadium. She was excited to meet someone new, saying that she was tired of the same old boring faces. The girl's name was Roxy. She said she'd be happy to have Lola stay with her for the next couple nights, and that she hadn't hosted in a sleepover in ages, so Lola would have to forgive her if she were a little rusty. Lola thought Roxy was simply bowing to the alpha's demands, but then the girl went above and beyond by offering to paint Lola's nails and asking to braid her hair. She even put on a movie for them to watch and made popcorn. Lola really liked her. She'd never been close with any of the other girls in the wildfire pack. Maybe Roxy wouldn't be so eager to accept Lola as her guest if she knew what her parents had been accused of. She hoped Roxy never found out so that she wouldn't look at her any differently. Right now, she treated Lola like a new friend, which felt nice. If her secret got out, though, Lola feared Roxy's attitude towards her would change for the worse. When asked about her family, Lola simply said they were dead and that she didn't really want to talk about what had happened. Even though Roxy was clearly curious, she respected Lola enough to keep away from the subject. The next day, Lola was helping Theo piece together a puzzle. They'd brought the puzzle outside so Theo could watch his friends play kickball from the picnic table. But maybe that was a mistake, because he kept looking over at them like he wished more than anything he could participate in the fun. Dr. Guy was adamant that he needed to stay off his ankle, though. The old doctor worried that if the bones had yet to fully mend, too much strain could shift them out of the right position. Theo was annoyed because, according to him, his injury already felt 1,000,000 times better, and he insisted he could walk around just fine without his crutches. Lola sympathized with Theo. She never liked being left out either, and everyone in the wildfire pack always left her out of everything. Lola had the idea that instead of playing kickball, the pups could start a round of freeze tag, and Theo could be the fire king who would walk around and unfreeze anyone able to answer a question he asked. When she presented her proposal to the pups, they saved up the ball and readily agreed. Theo told Lola she had to play with them, and she wasn't going to refuse him. It turned out to be a lot of fun. Lola didn't expect a game of freeze tag to draw so much laughter out of her, but she was genuinely having a good time. She wasn't smiling nearly so big when Kai saw what was going on and decided to join in for the next few rounds. Now that the alpha was here, she felt like she couldn't let herself unwind and be silly. Her stomach was in all sorts of knots and her knees had gone weak. She couldn't run properly or focus on the game as long as Kai was a part of it. She was just about to sit out when Theo pointed behind her and cried, "Look out, Lola! Zach's right there!" Zach was a 10-year-old boy with gray eyes and a basketball t-shirt. He had won the last round and earned his turn to run around freezing everyone he touched. He was reaching for her right now. Lola's instincts kicked in, and forgetting her plans to quit the game altogether, she veered right to dodge him and barreled for safety. She should have paid better attention to what was ahead of her, or else she would have seen Kai in her path, and she wouldn't have run into him. The collision sent her and Kai toppling to the ground. Kai landed on top of her, his knees flanking her waist as his hands fell at either side of her head. He chuckled nervously when he realized the position they were in. Meanwhile, Lola had a furious blush on her face. Before Kai could move to get off of her, Zach came by and touched both of them. "Freeze!" he screamed. "I guess we're stuck like this," Kai mused. He didn't seem too upset to be caught in this predicament. If anything, he was grinning like he was enjoying himself. "It's just a game. We're not really stuck," Lola observed. To which Kai shrugged. "Rules are rules," he said, pretending like it was out of their hands. He dipped his head a little so that his face was closer to hers. "You're moving," said Lola. "My bad." His nostrils flared as he slowly inhaled through his nose. "You smell like peppermint." Lola didn't know what to say to that other than, "Thank you." She was craning her neck to look around for Theo. Where was the Fire King when you needed him? But his help was no longer required, as their game of freeze tag was suddenly interrupted. Lola's heart dropped into her feet when news reached her ears that members of the Wildfire Pack had arrived and were demanding to speak to the Alpha of the Valor Pack. Ethan had recruited 4 other wolves, including his beta and his girlfriend, to escort him to the Valor Pack's territory. Not enough to imply that he was anticipating a fight. Mothers and nannies coaxed their pups away from the scene so that the alphas could discuss business without having bubbly laughter and high-pitched shrieks included in the background noise. Theo tried to stay, but Kai told him it was better that he went with his friends. Lola attempted to follow them. Unfortunately for her, Ethan pointed her out immediately. "Lola, just the person I've been looking for." Her body tensed as if hit with a shockwave. Kai glanced between her and Ethan. Surely he was wondering what all this was about and how Lola was involved, but he held off asking for an explanation and simply greeted Ethan. "Hello," he said, offering his hand. He looked past Ethan's shoulder as if searching for someone. "Where's your father? I thought he wanted to speak to me." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Didn't you hear?" "Hear what?" "I guess news travels slow," said Ethan. "The old alpha was murdered." Kai's mouth fell open in surprise. "Murdered? That's terrible. I'm so sorry." Ethan sniffled as if he might cry just thinking about it. "Yeah, it's really sad." "How was he murdered? Who did it?" "Funny you should ask." Lola pinched her arm. Please let this be a dream, she thought. But no matter how many times she closed her eyes and reopened them, Lola found herself trapped in the same situation. She tried to make a run for it, but one of the members of the wildfire pack quickly intercepted her and shoved her back. She tripped over her foot and fell on the ground. "Hey, back off!" Kai yelled, picking up the wolf who dared touch his mate by his shirt collar and launching him into the nearest tree. "That's no way to treat us, Kai," said Ethan. "Well, that's no way to treat Lola." He bent down to help Lola to her feet. "No wonder she left your pack if this was what she had to deal with over there." Lola was relieved he referred to her by her name and not his mate. She didn't want Ethan to be made aware that Kai was her mate for some reason. She didn't know what he'd do with that information, but she was sure he would find a way to use it against her. "We're looking out for you, Kai. You don't know the treasonous scum you've welcomed into your home." "What are you talking about?" "Lola's the one who murdered our alpha." Lola was shaking her head well before Ethan even finished speaking. "No, I didn't." "Your pack is housing a wanted fugitive, an escaped prisoner, whatever you want to call it. So if you'll kindly hand her over, you'd be doing us a favor. And we'd be doing you a favor, removing a bloodthirsty murderer from your territory. She was probably plotting to kill you in your sleep tonight. It's a good thing we showed up to warn you." Kai looked over at Lola with an expression of horror miring his features. He believed them, she thought. He believed every lie out of Ethan's mouth. He hadn't even given her a chance to tell her side of the story before making up his mind that she was a murderer and scheming to murder him next. "I think you should leave," Kai told Ethan. "We'd be glad to. First, hand over Lola." Relief filled Lola when he said, "No, I'm not going to do that." Ethan's eye twitched. He was angry and trying not to show it, but Ethan's poker face was non-existent. "We're trying to protect you, Kai. Lola's dangerous. She may look all sweet and innocent, but inside she's as conniving as they come. Think of your pack. Are you really willing to put their lives at risk?" "It's my pack and this is our territory. I'll do what I want." He didn't miss a beat as he spoke. Gone was the uncertain boy with the awkward laugh and nervous habit of scratching his neck. In his place was someone who exuded confidence. Unlike Ethan, Lola couldn't read his thoughts. He'd masked them well behind a cool and collected demeanor. "Thank you for the warning. You can leave now." Ethan bared his fangs and growled, but he knew Kai had the home advantage and the numbers on his side, so he backed down. Before he left, he targeted a glare at Lola. His eyes were so fierce and murderous, they sent chills running up and down her spine. He wasn't giving up. He'd avenge his dead father no matter what. Lola turned to thank Kai as she watched Ethan and the other wolves make their slow and hesitant retreat. Then she saw the way Kai was scrutinizing her, looking her up and down, pinning her beneath a stern gaze that made her feel like a suspect at an interrogation table, and she immediately snapped her mouth shut. "Listen to me, Lola." He began in a low voice that didn't rub Lola the right way. "I need you to be very honest with me. Did you kill your old alpha?" Lola nearly barked out a laugh. This was ridiculous. Just when she was beginning to open up, she was once again being accused of a crime she did not commit. Only yesterday, wasn't he telling her he could be trusted? That he wouldn't hurt her? That this pack was different? Well, In this game of Spot the Difference, the two pictures were exactly the same. Kai was treating her like everyone else did. "I didn't kill anyone," she said, trying to sound calm even as her insides burned with a fury she could hardly contain. Kai's eyes moved over her face, searching it for the tiniest sign of a lie. "You don't believe me." "It's not that, Lola. I just have to be sure. Ethan's right. I have to think about the pack, about Theo, and if I thought they were in danger because I wasn't careful." "You think I'm dangerous?" It was disrespectful to interrupt an alpha, but Lola was in such a state of disbelief and hurt, she hadn't even realized she'd cut him off mid-sentence. The irony of it all was too much for her. "You're the one who brought me here. I didn't want to come. You talked me into it." "I know," he said. "But you were so quiet and small, I didn't think there was any way you'd turn out to be a threat." "A threat?" "I'm not saying you are one. I don't know if you are. I don't know who to believe right now." Lola was over this conversation. She'd been ready to walk away from the moment she knew Kai was starting to doubt her. The more he talked, the more she regretted having ever agreed to come here at all. This turn of events shouldn't have surprised her. Kai had only known her for a day or two, and she couldn't expect him to trust her character in so short a time period. But this hurt was an emotion she was all too familiar with, and she'd grown weary of having to tolerate its company. The fact that Kai was her mate made the ache in her chest 10 times more painful. Everyone assumed the worst of her. Everyone blamed her. She didn't know what she'd done to deserve this judgment, other than share the same blood as two alleged traitors who she still believed were as pure as the driven snow. "It's fine," said Lola. "I've overstayed my welcome anyway. I'll go so you don't have to worry about me killing you or anyone else." Kai snatched hold of her wrist. "I didn't say I wanted you to leave. Maybe if you just explained to me why you did it." "I didn't do anything." "Okay, then maybe if we find a way for you to prove that you can be trusted." "You said you were going to prove that I could trust you. Now I'm the one who has to earn your trust?" He blew out a sigh, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I just want everyone to be safe." "Well, if you think I'm jeopardizing your pack's safety, I'll leave." He groaned. "Would you just listen to me?" She'd been listening, and she'd heard enough. She wasn't interested in talking to the alpha of the Valor Pack anymore. If she had to talk to anyone, she wanted it to be Kai. The boy who rambled and acted bashful around her. The one who sped out the house to find a hair tie for her. Right now, she wasn't speaking to that boy. She was speaking to the alpha, someone who made it his business to sniff out threats and eliminate them. He'd identified her as a possible threat, and Lola wasn't about to wait around for him to make a decision about what to do with her. She pulled as hard as she could until her hand finally came loose. Lola ran, coming down onto all fours as she shifted into her wolf form. Kai was calling her name. She ignored him. A whine snuck past her muzzle as she defied the power of the mating bond, which was compelling her to turn around and rush back into Kai's arms. Lola leaned on her instincts to propel her body forward, and it was because of her instincts that she was able to continue running. She ran, and ran, and ran, and ran. Lola was still running when she felt something violently knock into her side, and she hit the ground. She was rolling, and then she wasn't moving at all because a wolf had her pinned to the ground. The wolf smelled like burnt grass and black banana peels, and Lola instantly recognized that it was Ethan. He was snarling in her ear, not like a wolf, but like a monster. A drop of his drool landed on her snout and dampened her fur. This was it. This was how Lola would meet her demise. She shut her eyes and waited to feel pain. She tried to find some comfort in the knowledge that soon enough she'd feel nothing at all. Lola didn't expect anyone to rescue her, so she was amazed when a black wolf appeared out of nowhere. The wolf charged at Ethan. He bit Ethan's shoulder and shoved him off of Lola's back seconds before he would have torn her apart. Lola was still lying on the ground, shaking in fear as she comprehended her near brush with death. The black wolf came to stand over her, and that's when she smelled it. Vanilla, cinnamon, and rainwater, and she instantly knew that this beautiful black wolf was Kai. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes were trained on Ethan, tracking his every move as he waited for him to go on the offensive. He bowed his head so that his jaw was touching her forehead. He was signaling to Ethan and his followers that he was here to protect Lola. If they wanted her, they would first have to deal with him. In case Kai wasn't intimidating enough on his own, he brought along a few comrades, of which included Lola's two favorite people, Cut-Nose and Fish-Breath, better known to the Valor Pack as Jax and Luke. Even Lola's new roommate Roxy had shown up. Ethan rounded up his wolves, and together they stared down the members of the Valor Pack that were shielding Lola. Lola felt Kai's throat vibrate against her brow as he growled at Ethan. Ethan took a step forward, but froze when Kai's controlled snarl turned fierce. For a while, it was the Wildfire Pack versus the Valor Pack. The two sides weren't fighting. Not yet, at least. Instead, they faced each other off in a staring contest, each side daring its opponent to make a move. The air was thick with tension, as both alphas knew that once a fight broke out, the chances that someone would die were high. Ethan was willing to sacrifice the lives of his pack members, no problem. But Lola knew he cherished his own life far too much to start something unless it was guaranteed he'd make it out the other end all right. Not only did Kai have stronger muscles and sharper teeth, his determination to protect Lola radiated off of him, and it shook Ethan's nerve. On the other hand, even though he wasn't afraid to fight, he didn't want anyone to get hurt unnecessarily, least of all his friends. Lola worried that Kai would realize he'd rather lose an accused murderer to Ethan than the people he'd known for years and counted as family. Kai needed only to move off of her and motion for his pack to back down for Ethan to finally have his revenge. Lola would put up a fight, but she was outnumbered and outmatched. She wouldn't survive a fight between her and Ethan, let alone while Ethan had his sidekicks to back him up. Kai never left her, though. He stood over her like a guardian. The way the sunlight shone down on him, outlining his body in a bright halo, made him look majestic and otherworldly. Hours seemed to tick by, and no one moved other than to blink and breathe. Lola's heart sank when Kai slowly inched away from her, but then he nudged her shoulder with his head, encouraging her to stand up. Lola obliged him, albeit on shaky legs. Ethan got into a fighting stance. He wasn't willing to let them go so easily. He'd misunderstood Kai, though. Kai didn't want to take Lola back to the Valor Pack. He wanted to escort her to the Wildfire Pack so that they could all have a discussion about her murder charge. He communicated this to Ethan in the way in which wolves speak to each other, and Ethan relented. He made them walk ahead of Ethan just in case they tried to turn around and flee with Lola. Lola was glad her old pack was nice enough to provide them with clothes so that they could shift back into their human forms. She'd worried that Ethan would force Kai and the rest of them to have this conversation naked, but it seemed he was more civil than she'd been willing to give him credit for. Though she wouldn't put it past him to have at least considered the idea. Now Lola found herself sitting in what looked like an interrogation room. It was small, with one table in the middle of it and two chairs on each side. The chair Lola settled into was hard and uncomfortable, but she had a feeling the guests who were sent to this place weren't meant to enjoy any comforts at all. Yet Kai's presence was the greatest comfort they could have provided her. He was sitting to her right, his hand holding hers from underneath the table as he addressed Ethan. "I understand that you're upset. Believe me, I know what it's like to lose your parents, but you're being rash. Don't you think you should at least have a trial before you execute one of your own?" he asked. Ethan and his beta exchanged a smirk. They were sitting across from Kai and Lola. All the other wolves had received orders to wait outside. "A trial," Ethan scoffed. "We don't need a trial. We know it was her." "How?" Ethan counted off all the evidence they had against her on his fingers. 1, we found the murder weapon in her room. It still had my father's blood on it and everything. 2, her parents tried the same thing 10 years ago. The only difference is that they didn't succeed. 3, she has the motive. She blames my father for her parents' death, so she killed him out of spite. He was stabbed? Yes. You think Lola's capable of killing the alpha of the Wildfire Pack so easily? Without him leaving a scratch on her? She did it when he was asleep. He couldn't fight back. She never gave him the chance. How did she sneak into his room? Ethan shrugged. Did you ever wonder if someone hid the knife in her room? Clearly, everyone in this pack knows what her parents were accused of and how they died. The murderer would know too. What if Lola's being framed? You'd be calling for the execution of an innocent person. Are you okay with that? All of that sounds really far-fetched. I'm the kind of guy that likes to go with the simplest explanation. Well, the simplest explanation isn't always right. And if you're wrong, Lola loses her life for nothing. Kai's voice was rising in volume and intensity. He was growing frustrated. Lola could feel his irritation in the way his fingers clenched around hers. The veins that ran through his hand and neck were bulging out of his skin. And maybe I'd be worried about that if I weren't so sure she did it. All the evidence points to her. Who else in the wildfire pack would want the alpha dead? My mind is made up. She's guilty. I have no doubt about it. He grinned at Lola when he saw her face drain of color. I don't see why you're not more excited. You'll get to see your parents again. And won't they be so proud of you? I mean, you pulled off something they could only attempt. Lola had enough of Ethan mocking her parents and spitting on their reputation. Leaping up from her chair as she slammed both fists atop the table, she yelled, "My parents were innocent, you jerk!" Kai jumped in the chair next to her, surprised by her outburst. Maybe Lola would have felt a little satisfaction had she incited that kind of reaction from Ethan. Instead, Ethan was merely laughing at her. Her anger rose tenfold. Lola considered herself a patient person. She had to be in order to deal with all of the ugly comments and cold looks for so many years while she was a part of the wildfire pack. But Ethan had pushed her to her breaking point. She was about ready to climb up across the table and smack him. Let them add assaulting the alpha to her list of crimes. Then at least there'd be something on there she was actually guilty of. Kai must have seen the anger burning in her eyes because he grabbed her shoulders to hold her back and whispered for her to calm down. "See? She's out of control," said Ethan. His beta snickered, equally amused. "She's like a rabid dog." "I think that's enough," said Kai, but his tone suggested the word think meant they needed to shut up about Lola, or else. Calling a werewolf a dog was a huge insult, and Kai wouldn't tolerate that kind of disrespect being targeted at Lola. Lola never had someone stand up for her like that before, other than Theo, but the main reason he'd come to her defense was because she'd made him promise. She wasn't sure if Theo would have done it of his own volition, but in this moment, she knew Kai wasn't saying or doing anything out of obligation. He was here for her because he wanted to be. Ethan didn't seem to take Kai's threat seriously because he agreed with his beta and even chimed back in with, "She is like a dog that needs to be put down." Looking at Kai, he said, "She's unpredictable, Kai. You can't trust her." "But I can trust you?" he questioned dubiously. "I've never murdered someone from my own pack. I think that earns me more trust than her." Lola shook her head in frustration. No matter what they said, Ethan would never believe her testimony. Kai saw that she was distressed, so he once again took her hand in his from underneath the table. This time he rubbed her knuckles with his thumb. When Lola glanced at him, he nodded at her, as if to say he would take care of this. "I'm not so sure about that," said Kai. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Tell me something. How are you coping with your father's murder? Is it really upsetting?" "Of course, he was my father." "It must be exciting to be alpha now, though. I remember talking to your father once. He told me he'd die before giving up his position to anyone, including his son. He was a polite man, but there's no denying he was power-hungry. Wasn't a little part of you glad when you heard that you'd be taking his place sooner rather than later?" Ethan wasn't smiling anymore. "I don't like what you're implying." "Am I implying something?" Kai asked, tilting his head too in order to play up his ignorance. "I was just wondering out loud. What did you think I meant?" Ethan simply glared at him. "What does your beta think?" Kai turned to Matthew, Ethan's beta, before Ethan could answer on his behalf. "Do you think Ethan's happy that he gets to be alpha now that his father is dead?" Matthew glimpsed at Ethan out of the corner of his eye. Then his gaze fell to his lap. He seemed to be actually considering it for the first time. It was Lola's first time considering the idea, too. She knew she hadn't killed the alpha, but she hadn't suspected Ethan. He'd never expressed anything for his father other than respect and adoration. He'd always idolized the man and said great things about him to all the members of the pack. And when he'd confronted her about the alpha's death, he'd looked at her with such righteous anger. Had all of it been an act? This whole time? That day a murder attempt was made on the alpha's life so many years ago. The murder attempt her parents had been framed for? Ethan had been the first to rush to the alpha's side, asking if he was okay and swearing to do everything he could to prevent another incident from occurring. Ethan may have hated her, but Lola would have sworn on her life that he'd loved his father. Had the jealousy and hunger for control really eclipsed that? I don't know, said Matthew. He's your friend. He's never once confided to you about wanting to be the alpha? He faltered. Maybe once or twice. Doesn't that give him a motive? How come no one ever looked into Ethan when his father was found dead? You were all quick to search Lola's bedroom. Let me guess, at his suggestion, right? Did anyone ever think to search through his stuff? You know what? Now you're wasting my time, Ethan objected. I don't care what you say. I know she's guilty, my mind is made up. And not only are you on my territory, but Lola is a member of my pack. So I get to decide what we do with her, not you. Is that all it takes to charge someone with murder? No trial? No vote? No investigation? You just need someone with a little bit of authority to throw out a couple accusations, and your pack accepts it as fact? No questions asked? Then I might as well give it a try. What are you talking about? Without further explanation, Kai stood up and marched outside, dragging a confused Lola along behind him. Before Lola could inquire about what he was up to, Kai called for everyone's attention. The curious members of the Wildfire Pack had already gathered in front of the Alpha's house. Having seen them usher Lola through the doors, many were idling just outside as they waited to hear what would become of her. His audience had already been assembled without him having to lift a finger, so Kai need only make his announcement. Your former alpha was killed, but not by Lola. It was Ethan. What followed was the gasp heard around the world, then whispers, like the aftershock of an earthquake. Ethan was rushing out the door and immediately started conducting damage control. Don't listen to him. He's making it up. Think about it. Who has more motive than Ethan to kill your alpha? How old are you now? He asked Ethan directly. 27? 28? And how old were you when Lola's parents allegedly tried to kill your father? 18, right? That's the age when alphas normally start talking to their sons about taking over the pack, if they weren't talking about it already. I bet you waited to ask your father about that when you turned 18, and when he told you he wasn't planning on making you alpha, you were furious, so you tried to kill him. It's a lie, he shouted. But it didn't work, so you framed it on Lola's parents. I don't know why you picked them of everyone else. They were just unlucky, I guess. Ethan was seething with rage, but the panic in his expression was almost potent enough to overshadow it completely. Years go by, and you decide to make a second attempt. Maybe you and your father got into an argument. Maybe he did something you disagreed with. I don't know what happened, but whatever it was, it triggered you. So you killed him, and you blame Lola because everyone knew her as the daughter of a couple traitors, and it's easy for people to believe that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Stop, he hissed. His fists were clenched so tightly at his sides that his knuckles had turned white, and his nails were cutting into his palm even though his claws weren't drawn out. Lola instinctively stepped closer to Kai, afraid of what Ethan might do once he snapped. And the reason you're rushing to execute Lola is because there's only one person here who knows for a fact that she didn't kill anyone. And that person is her. Once she's gone, there will be no one left to wonder who actually did it, right? You're wrong. Every word out of your mouth is a lie. Kai faced the stunned onlookers as they reeled from disbelief, shame, and betrayal. Even Matthew stood frozen in place. Only his eyes moved as he studied Ethan. You were all so eager to search Lola's room, said Kai. Has anyone here tried searching Ethan's? You might find something interesting in there. Lola watched Matthew beckon a few others to follow him, and she wondered if he was taking up Kai on that suggestion. Ethan hadn't noticed, too busy fighting to contain his unadulterated fury. It got to a point where Kai pushed too many buttons, and Ethan wasn't tolerating these allegations anymore. In record time, he transformed into his wolf and launched himself at Kai's head like a rocket. Kai stumbled and fell onto his back, but he managed to catch Ethan before he bit his throat, which was good news for both of them. Ethan was already finding himself in hot water. Killing the alpha of another pack wouldn't help his situation. It might start an all-out war, if anything. Kai shifted into his wolf form and retaliated against Ethan's attack. It wasn't long before Kai proved out to be the stronger of the two. He sustained an injury to his ear and a scratch across his shoulder blade, but he had Ethan whining and pleading for mercy within 5 minutes. Lola was relieved. She'd been at the ready in case Kai needed help, claws and teeth all set to join the fight. Luke and Roxy had to hold her back from immediately throwing herself into the fray. They trusted Kai would win and didn't need Lola to fight on his behalf, so they each grabbed an arm and shook their heads at her. "He's got this," said Jax. "Don't worry," Roxy affirmed. And they'd been right. Soon after Ethan's embarrassing defeat, Matthew returned to the scene with a bloodied t-shirt that belonged to their newest alpha. Luke laughed, despite the heaviness of the situation. "You didn't think to get rid of the shirt. Let me guess. It was your favorite and you thought you could wash out the blood?" Or he'd been afraid that hiding or burying it somewhere else was too risky. If a member of the Wildfire Pack caught a whiff of their dead alpha's scent in an odd location and went to investigate, they may uncover the evidence. Lola's pack approached her to extend their regret and sympathy. Some of them told her that they always suspected her parents were innocent, but Lola found it interesting that they hadn't expressed any doubt until now. At least her family wouldn't be seen as a generation of traitors anymore, though it didn't really matter because Lola wasn't planning on staying with the Wildfire Pack anyway. She had too many bad memories there. She went with Kai and the others to the Valor Pack's territory so that Kai could receive treatment. Dr. Guy examined him and reassured them that his wounds were already healing. He did bandage them and apply some salve to relieve the pain, however. Once Lola knew that he was all right, she found a quiet spot outside where she could listen to the wind and catch her breath. She would have liked to stay with Kai, but thought he might be too tired from all the excitement to put up with her company. "Lola!" Lola spun her head around at the sound of her name. Just the person she'd been thinking about. He looked better now. He'd reverted into his human form and changed into a fresh set of clothes. His hair was damp. He must have taken a shower. The soap he used smelled like lavender, but it was nothing compared to his natural aroma. "I'm glad you came back," said Kai. "I wanted to talk to you." Lola only managed to stare at him at first. When she didn't say anything, he rubbed his neck. For some reason, seeing him rubbing his neck and acting nervous around her again put her at ease, and she found she suddenly had the confidence to do something she'd been hoping to do since returning to the Valor Pack. "Look, Lola, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. I should have known." The words left him as Lola sprang to her feet and threw her arms around him. She couldn't remember the last time she'd initiated a hug. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you," she exclaimed. She might have thrown in another thank you because 3 didn't seem like nearly enough, but she didn't want to annoy Kai. Besides, nothing she said could ever repay Kai for what he'd done for her. Kai hesitantly returned the hug. When she didn't object, he hugged her tighter. "You're welcome," he said into her hair. They stayed like that, just holding each other and reveling in each other's scent. Neither said a word, but the silence was comfortable. "Hey, Lola," said Kai after a while. "Is it okay that I'm touching you?" Lola grinned into his shirt. "Yes." "Is it okay that I'm hugging you?" "Yes." "Then." He paused. Lola heard him swallow nervously. She lifted her head up from where she'd been resting it on his chest to look at him. Her heart lurched when she saw his face. His eyes were half closed and his lips were a breath away from hers, literally a breath. She could feel the air exiting his lungs shakily. "Would it be okay if I kissed you?" Lola smiled. which should have been an answer in and of itself. Yet he didn't move. He was unsure. He was afraid he'd scare her. He didn't realize that Lola had never felt so safe, so he was waiting for verbal permission. Would it be okay if he kissed her? Yes, she told him. The next thing she knew, Kai's smile was pressed up against hers.